This is Jackson County Government Close-Up, your source for news and information from your county government. Join us this hour for in-depth conversation, viewer call-ins, and a chance to meet those in county government working for you.
Good evening and welcome to Jackson County Government Close-Up. Tonight our focus is on the roads department, and we've got a lot of good stuff to talk about. We'll look ahead to the capital improvement projects of 2012. We'll also get a close-up look at the day-to-day maintenance that the road department is in charge of. And you may be surprised at how much they do and how much ground they've got to cover. And we'll find out how the roads department handled an emergency in the middle of the night on a weekend that affected residents near Cobley Road. As always, the goal with this program is to better inform Jackson County residents about what is happening inside their government and to give you a close-up look. Now, before we turn our attention to the roads department, let's spend some time with Jackson County Administrator Danny Jordan. He recently sat down with Bill Mance to discuss the accomplishments and the challenges of last year and look ahead to what's in store in 2012.
Now, Jackson County 2011 Year in Review with County Administrator Danny Jordan.
Well, one of the things I think is really important for the public to know is that while we've lost O&C revenue, and I told you that's $23 million, let me explain about $15.6 million of that is general fund. That means that $15.6 million, we could spend it however we wanted. Wherever the board and budget committee needed to prioritize that funding, they could spend it. That's gone. We received $4 million in dedicated road funds. So that goes out to the road department and it funds road projects. That's gone for the road fund. However, the gas tax that passed 2 biennium ago and was just implemented last year basically replaced the loss of that funding. So that budget is really fairly stable because of the changes in circumstances. Then we had about $3.6 million that was for Title II and Title III. And what Title II and Title III allowed the county to do was to do a lot of public safety activities on public lands. And so if we don't have Title II and Title III funding to do that, then what happens is we have to pay for it out of the general fund. So we had $15.6 million and $3.4 million. We're pushing up near $20 million, $19 million. That's not all that we lost in the county. Over the last 5 years, and this is why I'm saying this, we also saw our return on investments go from about 6% down to 1%. Now, we're investing nearly $200 million. So that's going from $12 million to $2 million. That means we lost $10 million in investment income. Now, of that $10 million, about $5 million is general fund. About $5 million goes out to the dedicated funds. So you take that $5 million and you add it to the $19 million I already told you we lost. Now we're at $24 million. The other piece that reduced in funding for the county is our tax base, our property tax base. We were growing about 5.5% to 6% a year. It would be $1.5 million to $2 million a year in property tax growth. We're down to 1% now. And even though we're down to 1%, our collection rate went down 1%. So technically we're flat. So we lost $2 million there. So now we're at $26 million in revenue, discretionary spending that the county had in the past that we don't have anymore. We also lost a lot of revenue from departments that were generating revenue to the general fund. The clerk's office used to generate $750,000 a year to the general fund. Right now they break even. The Justice Court, because of changes in state law last session, now lost $300,000 to $500,000 a year to the state. The state basically came in and said, we're going to take more off the top and to the counties. So you add those up, now we're at $27 million. Our total property tax base is $31.5 million. So at one point, 5 years ago, if we go back 5 years, we had another $28 million in funding to provide services in our county. So I don't know if the public understands how good of a job we've done. It's not just about O&C revenue, it's about all of those revenues. We have a lot of highlights this year, Bill. And part of those highlights are developed by the fact that we have a couple of new members on the board that came in really hungry and eager to make an impact. Probably a couple of major policy issues that they wanted to focus on, one being economic development and the other being O&C and timber funds. Yeah, one thing I say about CW, he's not going to be a lame duck commissioner. I mean, he knows he only has a year left, but he's still right in the middle of things. I think he gets a lot of energy out of the two new commissioners being here. I think it's fun for him to see them grow and take on the tasks they're taking on. So we took some huge steps this year, especially for the county, in making ourselves more public around the work we do with economic development. The county's always been involved in economic development in some way, but the board's desire was really to kind of push more publicly the things that we're able to do, and then also take on some new initiatives. So, several things we did, but among a few of those are funding the Southern Oregon Regional Economic Development Incorporated to a greater extent, to help them perform outreach services and help develop businesses locally. We funded the Sustainable Valley program initiative, again, which is this county's second year of funding that, to the tune of another $50,000. We created an economic development website at our Jackson County website, a web page, at our Jackson County website, really to kind of just show people who may be interested in developing a business here or enhancing their current business activities here, what the county can do to help them facilitate that. That's received a lot of positive input and feedback. And then probably one of the major things we did was create a grant program to help local businesses that create local jobs start up and employ new employees. And we just actually approved our first grant there about last month, which assisted in adding 13 new jobs. Well, technically we've lost timber payments. We're not getting them anymore. The bill that authorized the reauthorization for the 4 years has expired. Everyone has spoken in the past about how Jackson County's positioned themselves financially to deal with that impact, but it still hurts us, just not to the extent it's probably hurting other counties around us. While that's going on, we have Congress trying to make a move, both on the House and Senate side, for some form of reauthorization. At least our congressional delegation is. On the House side, they're looking at temporary reauthorization with a potential timber plan that would basically set aside 50% of the land and cause timber harvest on 50% of the land, and those timber proceeds would come back to the county. It would create jobs locally. So there's more than just the county receiving funds for the inventory of property within the county that's not taxable currently. So we would be able to provide services like we do, but also it sets aside a certain amount of reserve. On the Senate side, they're just looking simply at a reauthorization for a period of time, and that number of years can vary depending on who you talk to. Well, let me talk a little bit first about capital projects, because we really need to build the infrastructure to support the services that we have to deliver in the county. A lot of people have expressed concern about the county spending money on facilities and property and those types of things. So let me first of all offer that those funds that are spent on that are meant for that purpose. They're one-time funds. We don't take one-time funds and invest them into operations, because basically it makes the waterfall or the cliff we're going to fall off higher. So when we get one-time funds like a one-year reauthorization of timber money or a sale of a property or those kinds of things, we set them aside in a fund that we use to do the capital projects that are needed in the county, rather than go out and ask voters to pass a new bond to provide that infrastructure. First of all, because it's highly unlikely that voters would support that at this time, given the economy. But secondly, because we're living within our means and meeting all of our capital facility needs as well as operational needs. And this year we've taken some huge steps again all across the county. If you look out at our airport, we've done millions of dollars of projects out there. We made it in the news a lot, but we bought the old post office, or the post office as it currently is. And our plans are to renovate that. We've began that process. We brought on an architect now. We'll be going out to bid here pretty soon. Looks like we'll probably do a CMGC, construction manager, general contractor model, and hope to have construction started by the end of summer. So we're on a fairly short timeline. That's a huge project. That's a huge parking garage and also a renovation of 85,000 square feet. So
some more jobs.
it's more jobs also for the downtown core. We're going to bring nearly 300 employees right downtown every day. So they're going to be shopping at the local businesses, eating lunch all up and down the street. So hopefully it'll be a boost that way as well. It's also going to bring in thousands on a monthly basis of clients that use those same services. And it's going to locate centrally our services in a much better location for people that receive the services to have use of adjacent facilities for other services that go along with the services they get from our Health and Human Services Department. We're finishing up the Sheriff's Administration facility out in White City, and it's coming along. It should be done here in the next couple months. And we're then going to move on to remodeling to create additional jail space. White City Urban Renewal wrapped up this year. And when I say it wrapped up in terms of construction projects. It wrapped up in terms of the oversight committee being done with their work. There still is a White City Urban Renewal budget because we're still paying down bond debt for projects that we built. We also set aside some money in the urban renewal, $1 million, in case by 2014 White City were to incorporate, so that they'll have some base funds for building a city hall. This was one of the busiest years I've ever had in this job because, we had two people that came in with a lot of energy and desire to impact the county. And they've, brought all sorts of things to my attention that they want us to, as an organization, to focus on. One of those things being customer service. A lot of times people are very critical of local governments, and a lot of times rightfully so. Just like anybody can be critical of a private business. I think people forget that every organization, especially when it's as large and complex as one of ours, is going to have issues. So we focused really hard this year on customer service. We did countywide customer service training. We did training specific to departments' needs around customer service. We also created a new program. It's a secret shopper program where we have secret shoppers, just like you do in the private sector, that go around to county departments making inquiries and looking for assistance. And then we have a rating of how those departments and staff perform. And it's been very helpful to be able to give that kind of feedback to people, really on a non-biased basis. There's not anger and emotion behind it. It's really meant to help facilitate improvement in customer service. Well, we're going to see another change in leadership at the county because Commissioner Smith, and it's going to be a big loss to see Commissioner Smith go, like it was Commissioner Walker and Gilmore, because they have lots of experience, been around a long time. Probably this year, one of the biggest things we'll be dealing with, of course, is funding. Because Congress is going to come up against that budget deadline. Our county really, I think, financially, because we're positioned where we are, we can go 3 or 4 or 5 years without anything major happening. The other counties can't. They'll be lucky to make it halfway through a fiscal year. Regional problem solving was the other big thing that happened this year. It actually got approved by the board and sent up to the state for acknowledgement. If everything goes well, we would expect probably for cities to begin their comp plan amendment processes later this year, say October, September. And it could even be within this year that some of the cities get to requesting UGB expansion. So that'll keep the county really busy. The reduction in the public safety budget, it's going to be tight. As I said, we're hoping to kind of maintain the service level, but just kind of tighten the grip down a little bit. And I think we should be okay this next year. This job's hard. It's tough. It takes a lot of dedication, but it's also a lot of fun. And what's made it even more fun this year is the fact that we have a board who's been more aggressive, been more excited about coming to work and really getting involved. It's been tough at times, but it's also been, I felt much more supported and feel like in terms of getting some direction and vision, there's no lack of that. They've got more ideas than we have the ability to implement.
You are watching Jackson County Government Close Up, and we will spend the rest of the hour focusing on the Roads Department, and we do have in-studio guests, and time now to introduce them. And we've got John Vile here. He's the Jackson County Parks and Roads Director.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And Mike Boren is the Maintenance Manager for Jackson County, handling the North District and bridges.
Yes.
All right. Thanks for being here. Jackson County is vast, and so when you think of the roads department and how much you got to cover, that's a ton of territory. How many miles are we talking about?
You know, we have, in our total system, we have a little bit over 930 miles of roads. About 770 of those are paved roads, and about 165, 64 of those are gravel roads. And I think one of the interesting things about our county is we have everything from urban roads down in the valley floor next to cities that have high traffic volumes to a lot of the roads up in the high country that have fairly low volumes, but his crew spends a lot of time plowing them and trying to keep them open in the tough winters that we have around here. So we have a great variety, and almost 1,000 miles of roads keeps us busy.
Yeah. So are you able to get all the roads? How long does it take to cover all that? Is that a fair enough question? Do you try to give maintenance to every stretch of road throughout a single year, throughout 3 months? What are we talking about?
Let Mike talk about how he kind of prioritizes his work
Yeah,
there.
we do try to prioritize it as much as possible. Obviously, we can't get everywhere immediately, but we try to focus on the heavier traffic roads first. We work our way out kind of in a spiral a lot of times from where our location is, and we'll focus on high traffic roads first, major arterials, and then we'll work down to collectors, and then to work our way out and up the mountain. So that's kind of how we approach it.
This time of year it can be treacherous trying to work your way up the mountains, yeah?
Yes.
It is. I mean, this winter has been light, but at the same time, this winter has not been a winter that we haven't been doing anything. It's, even though it's been a light winter compared to many, there's still a lot of activity that goes on just trying to keep the roads safe, even in a light winter.
Yeah. But today things started to hit a little bit heavier. We may not have the amount of predicted rainfall and snowfall that was expected today, and we are taping this show on Wednesday, January 18th. Got the date,
yep.
Right? But there was certainly some wind and some snow and some rain. How did your team deal with that today?
Mike, you're out there.
Well, we did a little of both. It's not too bad right now on the rain yet, but we've got rain scheduled for all this week, so we'll be paying close attention to that. So we're making sure that our drainages are working properly, and we've been preparing for that for quite a while. So hopefully we should be in good shape there. But mostly for this day, it's been snow removal up high. We did get a fair amount of snow. It just kind of snowed steady all day long, so we had 4 to 8 inches in a few locations. So it kept them busy all day long up there, just plowing the roads.
The other thing with today is a lot of times today is kind of a normal day for us in that the forecasters said that we're going to have very high winds, we're going to have a heavy rain, and lots of snow in the mountains. And so basically what Mike and the other managers do is they prepare the crews to basically be on all hands on deck, where all the chainsaws are ready to go. We're going to have crews out sawing trees out of the middle of the road. We're going to have guys in the plows and the sanders clearing the snow off the road. We're going to have guys chasing water, unplugging inlets and culverts and everything to try to keep the water flowing. In the end, it didn't work out that way, but what we try to do is we try to anticipate the worst, plan for the worst, and if it doesn't happen, well then Mike can reassign us guys to go do more normal routine maintenance instead. But if it is the worst, then we're ready for it.
Yeah, no 2 days have got to be the same in this job, right? Obviously, you're trying to plan the best you can, but Mother Nature throws you a curveball quite often, I'm sure.
Always.
Yeah, yeah, and one thing to really point out that I don't think enough residents realize is from the roads department, your bread and butter is the day-to-day operations, the maintenance stuff that people don't necessarily see, but they rely on to get from here to there safely and that sort of thing, right?
Absolutely, and I believe we have some videos later on in the show that kind of talk about that.
Yeah.
But oftentimes departments like ours are associated with big projects. ODOT's associated with building the South Medford interchange. We're associated with building some of the projects that we're going to see on today's show. But really, if you look at how our department staff, the equipment that we have, and what we do on a day-to-day basis, most of it's the stuff that Mike's guys do of just taking care of the road so people can get to work and get home to their families every day. And there's a lot of work involved in just taking care of the road.
Yeah. We have had some light fog, or I should say some light snow, some freezing fog, which can lead to icy roads out there. That's pretty important this time of year. How do you deal with that?
Again, the same thing. We prioritize the locations, but we've got several different ways that we deal with it. One is we have different types of sand for different locations and things, but so we try to create better traction obviously. So, and we usually do that by hitting the bridges who tend to ice up first. We do the hills and the turns, and then we do known problem areas. But obviously, we can't do every spot and cover everything. So we really count on the motoring public to do their part in slowing down and driving defensively and just helping to take it easy and be aware of their surroundings.
Yeah, it's one thing that I think is an important point that Mike's making is a lot of times people think when we go out and sand that basically we sand all 767 miles of paved roads and all 165 miles of gravel roads. And that's impossible. And it would be a waste of resources and the public's money to do so. And so really what Mike's guys do is that we focus on problem areas. We know where problem areas are out in the road. We know that certain areas get more shade and tend to freeze up more. We also know that hills are a problem, corners are a problem, bridges are a problem. So typically that's where we're sanding. And the rest of the road is going to can be somewhat slick in that freezing fog you talked about, and drivers need to drive accordingly. We're trying to take care of the most dangerous areas, though.
Yeah. Capital improvements, certainly something that's very important, and you've got a handful of things you're working on for 2012.
We do. We got several projects coming up this year, of which 3 we wanted to touch on today. So I don't know if they can cue the first project up is the Kirtland Road project, what we call the Kirtland Road to Avenue G project. Those familiar with the White City area.
And we've got the Blackwell.
Okay.
We got Blackwell Road queued up first.
Let's do that one first. So Blackwell Road, on the south side of Blackwell Road, on the side facing Central Point, there's a couple of corners there that we've had a real safety issue with. Had a couple of wrecks that resulted in fatalities. And so we were able to get some federal safety money through a grant program that we applied for, and we were successful getting that grant. That project's going to be built this summer. We awarded it to a company called Leduc Construction, a fairly new company here in the valley, and it's going to be about a $560,000 project. And you can see these corners here. Basically, those corners are being straightened out, and you're going to have one continuous smooth corner that is going to make that road much safer, and that's going to be built this summer.
Yeah, that first caption, you were able to see the existing road and how much of a bend there was, and then that red line going through was really straightening that out.
Absolutely, and basically you're taking those 2 corners out and replacing it with one large one, and it'll much safer road when we're all done.
Yeah, and there you can take another look at it there.
Yep.
Let me ask a question that maybe you don't have an answer for. Why was that road built with that big of a curve in it in the first place?
You know, the huge majority of roads are very old. A lot of times people think of the roads that are fairly young and recent, but most of them are very old. This road right here was the original Oregon Highway 99. This was the original north-south route that went from LA to Seattle, and it was built for Model Ts. And so the original alignment, and that alignment that you see in that photo right there, was basically being used by Model Ts. And when vehicles were a lot smaller and they were traveling at 30 miles an hour, that was a very safe road.
Yeah.
That was probably over-designed. Under today's standards, some of those corners are too sharp, and we're taking some steps to make it safer.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's take a look at the Kirtland Road and Avenue G and what's in store for that project.
So those familiar with the White City area, Avenue G there is on the top of the screen, and the old facility that used to be the Kodak photography place, now Carestream, is the large facility right there. And you have a pair of 90-degree corners. If you're coming on Avenue G and you're headed towards the freeway, you have to go through those 2 corners. And so what this project is doing, it's straightening those 2 corners, and then Pacific Avenue, which is at the south there, comes up and tees into it. That project's actually out for bid right now. We're collecting bids on that, and the contractors are doing that work right now, giving us some bids. The project budget for this is about $1.4 million, and we're going to be looking at building that this summer as well. And you can see that's the corner of Pacific Avenue and Kirtland Road there on the screen right, or I'm sorry, Avenue G on the screen right now. And those 2 90-degree corners will be removed, and it'll be a much safer and straighter route. When this is done, we're also then transferring this section of the road as well as all of Kirtland and Avenue G to ODOT. And that's actually going to be an extension of Highway 140 in the future.
Yeah. All right, so I'll ask a question that maybe a viewer at home has. Is this project, you're just avoiding a couple of stops and speeding things up. Maybe is that how someone's looking at it, or really what's the major improvement that we're looking at here and the need for it?
You know, the biggest issue is you have the two 90-degree corners and the safety associated with that. When you have people literally making a curve at 10 to 15 miles an hour, and that's a fairly heavy route traveled by trucks. Very inefficient movements, movements that don't contribute much to safety, and we just needed to make it a safer route and a route that's going to facilitate through traffic for the trucks much better, and that's what that project will do.
Yeah, so looking at it, you don't realize the type of vehicle traveling on that route. In this case, you got a lot of heavy trucks.
You do. This is the White City area is very heavily industrialized, and a lot of those trucks, that route right there, Avenue G to Kirtland, is one of the favorite cutoffs from the White City area getting to the freeway. And so that's why ODOT was willing to accept it, is because it serves a lot like a state highway.
Yeah. All right, let's look at the third project coming up here for capital improvement in 2012, and that's the Mill Creek Drive Bridge. And there's a good look at it from a distance. Scary bridge.
Yeah, you know, it's a very beautiful bridge. You know, that old arch bridge kind of design. This bridge was built in 1923. And it was actually designed by a guy named Condi B. McCullough, which, if you're familiar with all the coastal bridges and the beautiful arch bridges on the Oregon coast, Condi McCullough was the Oregon State Bridge engineer, and he actually designed this bridge. Later on, there were some changes to it, so it's not a pure McCullough bridge, but it's a very picturesque bridge located up there in the Prospect area on Mill Creek Drive, which is also used to be old Highway 62, an old state highway that was transferred to the county many years ago. And we're going out with the project this summer you can see the deterioration on it. This bridge is showing its age. And so we're going to add about 2.5 feet to each side of it, make the bridge wider than it is, and completely rehabilitate the bridge. So those rails that you can see that are all deteriorated are all going to be repaired. When we're all done, it's going to be a nice, new, sparkling, clean, fancy looking bridge that's going to be 5 feet wider in total width, and it's much safer and lasts for, you know, hopefully another 50 years.
Yeah. Completion time on that one, you'll start this year. Is it a...
It's a one-season job.
Yeah.
They should start that this year and be able to finish by late fall or early fall.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and the other two projects?
Those are both projects that'll be one-season projects. So oftentimes, and we have later on in the program some projects that were multi-season, but all three of these projects this year will be done during the construction season.
Yeah, and that construction season, you got to strike when the iron's hot or the weather's hot at least, right?
Exactly. If you're moving dirt and that kind of stuff, you don't do that this time of the year, else you create a big mess.
Yeah. All right. Good stuff as we look ahead to 2012 and what to expect in our area in terms of capital improvements. And as we mentioned earlier in the show, there are a whole lot of things that the roads department does day to day in terms of maintenance, and it's not just construction projects. To give you a better idea, let's take you out on the road with Mike, and he'll show you just what the roads department does on a daily basis.
Well, one of our main priorities for the County Road Department in the winter activities is obviously keeping the traveling public safe. And one of the ways that we do that is through our sanding and snow removal. We want to have the roads in good shape when the school buses get out. That's really important for us, and when the traveling public's going to and from work. We try to hit all the problem areas the best that we can, and we're aware of a lot of those spots. We sand a lot of the corners and the hills. Obviously, we can't sand every place. We'd be out of material and couldn't afford to do that, but we try to hit all the problem areas that we know, and we do the very best that we can to keep the traveling public safe. Our drivers are very well trained. We have an in-house program through our Trans 360 program that we teach our drivers to do proper pre-trips and post-trips and how to operate in a safe manner, and we've got very qualified operators. We cover all of the county, obviously, but our main priority normally is the high traffic areas first. We try to focus on that, which pretty much is the valley. We concentrate on that first, and then we work our way out from there. Well, besides driving cautiously, one of the things that really helps us is to make sure when you see a sander that you give them plenty of room and you stay back a little ways. Obviously, we're throwing out fine rock, which can damage a vehicle if you're too close. So when we have the sander lights flashing, that's just a warning to please stay back and certainly not pass anybody during that time. We appreciate people just staying back and giving us some room to work. This year it's been pretty dry. It's been cold, but it's been dry. Usually when we have cold weather with moisture, that's when we start really having problems. So it can vary so much from year to year. Some years we don't use much material. Other years we can use a lot of material. So it really depends on fog and moisture content and how much rain we have, and then if it freezes when the rain comes down, that's always a problem, or how much snow we have. So there's a whole bunch of variables that are included into that, but each year it's different. We try to be prepared for each situation. We have different types of brooms. The first one that we utilize is our pickup brooms, and the pickup brooms are mostly used in the curb and gutter areas. It picks up rocks and picks up leaves and big gulp cups, whatever else can block our drainage. And if our inlets get blocked, the water backs up, which can get onto the road and cause damage to houses, or it can be unsafe because water's on the roadway, which can cause accidents, or the water can freeze down, which can make the road unsafe. Also, by picking up that debris, all the drainages that we have eventually make it to the stream, so it also helps promote fish-friendly situations. The other type that we have is this one right here, which is our side cast broom. We use that a lot for maintenance activities, shouldering, or cleaning up small rock spills, that sort of thing. It kicks the material off to the side as far as removing rock spills, that sort of thing. And then of course we still have the hand brooms that we utilize for picking up broken glass or small amounts of rocks. We look at ourselves just like a private property owner would look. As far as maintaining the water, we just want to get it through our system as well. Keep it in the ditches and get it away from the roads as quickly as possible for safety, so it doesn't erode the roads away or cause property damage to people's houses, that sort of thing. So a few of the ways that we do that is through using our Gradall, which is like a big excavator, and they load it up into dump trucks and haul it away with a couple flaggers supporting that. Another way that we do that is through our grader ditching, where we use a grader and we go along and we pull the material up out of the ditch and pick it up with the loader and haul it away. Some of the other activities that we do as far as drainage is changing out driveway culverts so that it's the proper size driveway culvert to keep the water flowing smoothly and get it through our system. And same thing with cross culverts, making sure that the culvert is large enough to handle the flow of the water, so when we do get floods, we have minimal impact to our roads, which also protects the traveling public as well.
And so there you are out on the road with the roads department, and you start bright and early in the morning, dark and early in the morning, certainly this time of year, with the sanding. What is that material made of?
There's two primary sanding materials that we use. The one that you saw there on the video is cinders, and they're actually volcanic cinders that are mined primarily out of the Klamath Falls and the Cascade Range. And it's red in color. And one of the reasons that we like to use cinders, there's a couple of reasons. One of them is they have tons of edges. They're very angular and have all kinds of edges, and they tend to bite into the snow and bite into the ice well and provide really good traction. The whole idea is put some friction material down so that you don't slip on the ice and snow. The other thing with cinders, though, that works really well is they're fairly soft. When cars run over them, they'll tend to break the big ones, big chunks. And so when one of those gets thrown up and hits your windshield, they don't tend to break windshields as much. And so the cinders are a great material because they provide great traction and great friction, but they're also nicer to your car in that they don't tend to break windshields like hard rock does. We do use some hard rock, though, and Mike will just touch on where we use those at.
Mm-hmm. And we call that a 1/4 and that's just a measurement of the size of the rock, but it's bigger than sand. It's slightly larger than that. And where we tend to use that more is on higher traffic areas, and here in the valley more so. We do sometimes use cinders down here as well, but it also stays on the road a little bit better. It doesn't kick off quite so quickly, so that's another reason we use it in the higher traffic areas.
It's heavier, so the trucks and the cars don't blow it off the road really as quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, and certainly that's got to be a problem. It gets blown off the road, and then now it's into the gutter, and now you got to clean up in that area, right? So,
And if the road's frozen up, then you have to go reapply it,
Yeah.
and reapply it, and reapply it, and that's that's kind of what we do this time of the year. Is we sand the same corners, the same bridges, day after day after day.
But even if it kicks off of the traveling path a little bit, it's still effective because it may be right on the edge. So if somebody does start losing a little traction, they'll usually run into along the edge. So it still helps.
yeah. One of the comments you had in that video, and we'll certainly have more of your day later on in this program, was you were talking about the drainage and thinking of it like a private property owner would be, and cleaning it that way. So you certainly take pride and you think about what it would be like for a property owner in that area. So I mean, I like the thinking that goes into the way you're cleaning up.
Yeah, that's the way we look at it, because sometimes people will say, well, your water is causing us problems. Well, really, it's not our water either. We're just trying to get it through our system, because the way we look at it is water in our business is kind of the enemy, because it can make the road soft. It can affect the substructure of the road. It can affect the surface. You can get sink spots, which can hold water on the roadway, which can be unsafe for people driving, or it can turn to ice. So there's a lot of reasons that it can be bad, and one of the way I might even mention this in the video a little bit, but we kind of look at it as you would a roof on a house, where the water drains off as quickly as we can, and the ditches would be the gutters, if you will. So we're trying to improve the cross culverts and just get the water through as smoothly and as quickly as possible, and on to the next property so that he can do the same.
Yeah.
And Tom, you mentioned that pride. Public sector employees don't always have the best reputation sometimes, and like any organization, we have employees that probably deserve that. But for the most part, I am just continually impressed by their dedication. You mentioned the time of the morning. For several weeks now, these guys are up at 4 o'clock in the morning. The whole crew is out sanding and plowing and trying to keep the road safe well before anybody else is on the road. What the idea being, like Mike said in the video, they're trying to make sure the school bus routes are safe, that people's commute to work is safe, and there's a lot of pride. People feel really good about the work that they do. We feel like we're making a difference and contributing to the betterment of our county and the betterment of society, and there's a lot of pride in that, and they really try hard to do a good job.
Yeah, I agree. All right, speaking of good jobs, let's look at a couple of completed jobs, capital improvement project jobs that were recently completed by the Roads Department. And let's start with Ross Lane, North Ross Lane.
The North Ross Lane project is the last one that we completed. This is a view of North Ross Lane before the project. You can see that basically it's a 2-lane road, no shoulders, right past the fog line it drops off. This is a residential area. It's also a major arterial that runs between West Main and Ross Anley, which is a very large north-south route on the west side of Medford. But it's also a residential area. So all people that are walking to Albertsons, pushing strollers and everything else, where are they going to go on this road? And so we had a large capital improvement project that went on for the last 2 years, and we finished it this last summer, where we added a center turn lane so people could turn into their residence much safer and get to there without stopping in the through lane, 2 through travel lanes. And then you can see, one of the most important elements of the project that really enhanced the safety of the road is now we have sidewalks on both sides of the road, as well as bike lanes on both sides of the road. This, to date, was the largest project that Jackson County has built. And it's about a $4.1 million project, and it was built by CoGap Construction, a local construction firm. CoGap has been a good firm. This was a large project for them, but they just did a fantastic job. Took us a couple years. One of the tricky parts of this project, Tom, is we had to close the road for those 2 seasons. And so we had a detour on some of the other surface streets in Medford. But that detour worked very well. The project was a great success. It was a little bit over a mile long, and it really turned out well.
Yeah, and you eliminated that stop sign at the end of McAndrews and at Ross Lane and made that a continuous turn.
We did a northbound. You can go off of North Ross onto McAndrews continuously, and then coming off of McAndrews, making a left turn, there's now a signal there, which those people that live on the west side of Medford knew that stop sign would back up horribly every afternoon and was kind of a mess, and that signal made that whole intersection much more efficient.
Yeah.
So good project. I'm excited that our staff did that one, and it turned out really nice.
I like it. As a driver, I like it.
Good.
And that's the key to it. All right, and then West Main?
Probably the other big project that we completed that was very, very visible, and it was completed 2 seasons ago, was the West Main Street. And I mean, everybody's familiar with, this is the old Jacksonville Highway that's been renamed now to West Main. But West Main Street, went from Medford to Jacksonville, and on the west side of Medford, out by Blackbird, Bi-Mart, that whole area, again, a very similar facility where you had 2 through lanes, no center turn lane, no facilities for pedestrians or bicyclists, and very high traffic volumes. You can see here the completed facility with sidewalks on both sides, again, bike lanes, both directions, a center turn lane, and 2 through travel lanes. We did have a little bit of a hiccup on this one in that we had a problem with the asphalt, and so we were in there this summer fixing some of the asphalt, but the contractor on this, Johnny Cap Construction, again, another local firm, they accepted full responsibility and paid for that repair 100%. Taxpayers didn't cost the taxpayers anything. They made that repair, and this road's good to go. And so, again, a very attractive project, real nice project that added huge safety features and added capacity to the road as well.
Yeah, so we saw the before and after shots in there, April 2008 to where it is today.
Yep.
How does that stuff get prioritized? And I know this is just an hour-long show, and maybe I just opened up a big can of worms there. But, to a project that very much needed, how was it identified that we've got to go that direction?
We have a capital improvement plan, and Mike Kuntz, our county engineer, he kind of manages that capital improvement plan, and it's a 5-year plan. And so for the next 5 years, we have each project that we're doing, and how those projects are prioritized are basically based on safety, capacity, sometimes the funding source. You have different funding sources that allows us to work on certain things like Mill Creek Bridge. There was dedicated bridge funding that we got for that one. But we try to prioritize those projects, and then when we do that, we take that to the County Roads Committee. We have a citizen committee, a committee made up of citizens in the area. We bring that to them. We ask them for their input. Are we making the correct recommendations for the 5-year plan? Once they bless that and say, yeah, that looks good to us, then we take it to the Board of Commissioners, and the Board of Commissioners officially adopts that 5-year capital improvement plan. And so we get input from the citizens, from the engineering staff that are responsible for implementing this stuff, and then recognition or acknowledgement from the Board of Commissioners that that's the right plan to do, and then we go implement it.
Yeah, certainly a comprehensive way of going about making that decision.
Well, we hope so. If the road we're fixing is not the one you live on and you want it fixed, you don't always agree with that plan, but we hope we're doing the best we can.
Yeah, very good. All right, you talked moments ago about having a tremendous staff, and I think this next video will help show some of that. As not too long ago, there was an emergency, middle of the night, on a Sunday that affected residents near Copley Road, and here's how the Roads Department emergency team took care of the situation.
So around 3:30 in the morning on October 2nd, one of our maintenance managers took a phone call from the 911 center. Basically said that there was a large amount of water going across Cobley Road. Cobley Road's a rural county road about a mile down from Butte Falls that heads up into BLM and private properties up in the hills. The area up above Cobley Road is a fairly isolated community, but there's approximately 15 to 20 residents up there. At the time this occurred, they were completely cut off. There's no good way out of there. There's some, what we understand, some pretty rough Forest Service roads you can get out on, but for the most part they were cut off. So there was an urgent issue for us to try to get the road back open so these people could get in and out.
Eagle Point Irrigation District had one of their canals breached, and a tremendous amount of water went down, and Cobley sat below the canal, Cobley Road, and because of the volume of water came down, it washed out a section of the road, undermined some other sections of the road as it ran down.
Our maintenance manager was able to respond there in the dark. You couldn't see anything. There was severe damage to the road, and the water wasn't stopping. The ditch was running. One of the most challenging things was to get a hold of the irrigation company and get the water shut off. Well, when they shut that spigot, there's still lots of water in the ditch. So it takes quite some time for the water to stop flowing. So basically we were just waiting until the water went down to where we could see what what we had, because there was some real fear that basically there was no road underneath that water. So once we got the water shut off, we were able to assess the situation, and then we brought in some trucks, materials, graders, and started getting things put back together. And at the peak of the event, we had around 9 staff out there with a grader and some dump trucks and other equipment. By 7:30, we had some material pushed off the road, and we were able to establish a lane. And so by 7:30 in the morning, we had one clear lane open, and then we started trucking in other materials. We brought in around a little over 1,200 yards of material to dump to rebuild the sides of the road. The sides of the roads were completely washed out in places, and portions of the asphalt were damaged. So about 1,200 yards, that's give or take about 120 truckloads. So that's a fair amount of material that was brought in. So far, we've spent somewhere in the neighborhood of $43,000 repairing this damage. And so the road's back together now. There's portions of the pavement that we're not going to repave this year just because we expect that pavement is pretty severely damaged and we're going to let it winter. And so it's in gravel right now. So there's parts of the road that's just a gravel road, and it's going to stay like that until next spring. You know, as you've seen in the photos that have been flashing on the screen, there was some pretty significant damage to this road. And like I say, for some time, we didn't know if the road was going to even there or not. But once the water went down, we were able to assess it. You could see the damage was pretty severe. And the response of our people, getting that put back together, getting the road back to open in basically an hour and a half, is pretty impressive work. It's well done. And the citizens that live in the area were well served. They were able to get out of their residence quickly and into town and to take care of the chores that they needed. Probably the biggest issue we had during that morning when it was closed was October 2nd was the opening weekend of hunting season. This is a popular hunting area, and we had to turn all the hunters back. And so that was a bit of a challenge. They had their hearts set on going to a particular area. They had to come back later in the day. But I'm very pleased with our staff. Our staff responded very quickly, did a fantastic job. The road was open in a fairly short time. Then it was completely rebuilt within a week. And it was great work. The taxpayers were well served by Jackson County's response.
And Johnny did a great job of describing what was happening there and what it took for the team to get out there and do it. But Mike, for someone, I know you weren't there necessarily in this situation, but what's it like putting something like that back together after it's devastated like that?
I just want to reiterate what John said. We've got some very professional guys that have been here for a lot of years and really understand what it takes to recreate the road and put it back into shape, getting the right amount of base rock in the right places, and being able to visualize where the ditch used to be, because there's an 8-foot drop where it used to be a road, and they just all work together very well, and it's something that we do on a regular basis to some degree. When we have floods, it's the same sort of thing that we do. So the guys just already know pretty much what to do. We have short little meeting to plan the approach or how we're going to do it, and the guys just go to town and get it done.
Yeah, on first observation, I would have thought this is something unusual, but the way you're talking is this happens more than you'd think in our area.
You know, this isn't an everyday event, but you know, this was an event where a irrigation canal broke and washed away the road. But every 4 or 5 years, we have a fairly significant flood in the valley someplace, and many times what these guys are rebuilding looks just like that. The shoulders are gone, there's vertical drop-offs at the edge of pavement, the pavement's been floated and torn out in places, and these guys have to go in and repair that. Some years, like the 96, 97, we had, hundreds of miles practically of this stuff. Other years it's not nearly as bad, but like Mike said, the guys are pretty good about knowing, you got to place the base rock first, and you place, some 3/4 minus, and you got to shape everything, you got to compact it, you got to do everything necessary to get the road back in shape, and they do it pretty quick. In this case here, we got the road open in a couple hours and completely back to 2 lanes of travel in less than a week.
Yeah. We've been fortunate with our weather this winter, at least I would think that. Not a whole lot of heavy snow, not a whole lot of rain, but it looks like it's starting to come in. As a team, what do you guys do to prepare for that, get your emergency teams ready?
We talked about that a little bit before, but like yesterday, the snow was predicted, the wind was predicted, the rain was predicted. What we did is we got people on the right shifts, we got all the equipment ready to go, The staff came in early. Basically, we got a bunch of eyes out there on the road. That's one of the first things you do in a big event like that, because you got almost 1,000 miles and really what's happening where. And so you get a lot of eyes out there on the road looking and assessing the situation. And then Mike and the other managers are making a whole series of calls saying, all right, let's send these resources here, let's send those resources there. And then as soon as you do that, right in the middle of it, something else happens and you have to readjust it. And then you just play that game throughout the whole event, where you're assessing the damage, getting the resources to fix it, and then you're going to the next place. And you just keep doing that until the event's over.
Yeah.
We make sure that our pickups are stocked with the right tools, that the chainsaws have everything they need and the fuel's good and they got extra chains and the ways to change it, that they have pull forks and shovels and all the implements that they need just to make sure everything's ready. Flashlights are good for at nighttime, and signs are ready to warn motorists if there's a problem area or caution, that sort of thing. So that's kind of what we look forward to, whether it's high winds, dealing with trees that come down, or dealing with flood situation, which could come as well, or snow. There's a myriad of events that could happen. Then we just try to be ready for them all as much as possible.
Yeah. Earlier in the show, we went out on the road with you, Mike, to see what day-to-day operations are like for the roads team. And not everything is an emergency. Certainly there is plenty of routine maintenance that goes unnoticed for the most part by the public, but is so important for the Jackson County citizens. Let's take a look more at what that day-to-day maintenance is like.
The machine here is what we call a culvert flusher. It's made by Vacon. The purpose of it is to do just what it says, to clean out culverts, large or small. It has the capability of utilizing 3,000 pounds per square inch water pressure to clean it. It has numerous different types of heads that you can put on the end of the hose for different types of things, as far as if you're trying to clean out a bunch of rock out of the culverts, or mud, or chewing up roots to get through the culvert. Also nowadays, we have a lot of underground utilities, so it's also a giant vacuum cleaner, you might say, that allows you to be able to remove material to locate utilities. There's so many utilities underground nowadays. Using this helps us to locate the utilities without causing damage to the utilities, so that we can work around it. So it's a great tool. The purpose is a couple reasons. One is to shape the road properly, so it has a certain amount of crown in the road, much like a roof of your house where the water drains away from the road. It shapes the road. It also helps get rid of potholes and washboards and gives us a smooth driving surface for the folks that live in the more rural areas. So we'll add rock from time to time and give them a good smooth surface to drive on. Also, the grader is utilized a lot of times for our shouldering, which the purpose of that is we'll pull the material up onto the road along our paved roads, and then we'll cuff it back off again, and that purpose serves a couple different reasons. One thing is that it keeps the road safe, so that you don't get these big drop-offs on the edge of our asphalt, which if a car goes off the road, they can hook that and have accidents. So a lot of times we're really making the roads much safer and by preventing accidents before they happen. Another purpose of that is if we keep the rock to the edge of the road, then it protects the edge of our asphalt, our investment in the road, and it keeps the road from breaking off and chipping off. So that's another reason that we shoulder. As you know, Southern Oregon grows a lot of vegetation, so it's a never-ending battle. And the purpose of that is to keep the trees from encroaching into the road and slapping against the cars or trucks. And it also helps to allow the sunshine in the wintertime, so that the roads thaw out a little bit better. And also we do hazard tree removal, so trees that we have that are dead and leaning towards the road, we try to address those as well, so that they don't come down in the middle of the night and cause safety problems as well. We also have to maintain all of our signs. There's many signs out here for various reasons need to be taken care of. We try to change those signs out every 10 years. Part of that is due to the reflectivity of those signs to make sure that they're visible at nighttime. And we keep the brush away from the front of the signs, just making sure that all the signs are proper there for safety's sake. We have over 350 bridges throughout the county, so we always want to make sure that they're working properly too. We have a bridge crew that takes care of that full-time basis, making sure that the drainages are good and that the trees aren't encroaching on the bridges. We also usually build a short span bridge each summer or every other summer, and so just making sure that there's no undermining of the bridge and that all the bridges are safe.
In that piece, we saw the grading of gravel roads. How often are you grading those roads?
It varies with the weather a lot of times. This year it hasn't been very often because they've been frozen. So having frozen gravel roads actually works pretty good for keeping them nice throughout the year. But as we start getting into the rain, that sort of thing, things can change real fast. We start getting potholes. You know, we try to keep that crown in the road. But a lot of these roads go from one super to another super, so somewhere in there's usually a flat spot, and so you got to try to deal with potholes. We can't get away from that. Also, washboards we get a lot of times, or muddy spots, so we try to keep a certain amount of rock on it to protect the road. Sometimes it can turn out muddy, or also in the summertime you see dust a lot of times. Well, that's the fines that are actually blowing away. That's what keeps the road together. So it varies how often we do it. Probably 4 times maybe a year or something normally. But again, it just depends on the road, how steep the road is. There's variables.
You know, one thing on that too is, you know, we mentioned a couple of times we have about 770 miles of paved roads and about 160 miles of gravel roads. If you went by complaints, you would think that that's reversed. People living on gravel roads, it's tough to live on a gravel road sometimes, and a lot of people get frustrated with gravel roads. We try hard to keep them in good shape, to keep the dust down, to grade them and make them smooth, but it's a lot of people get frustrated with the gravel road sometimes.
In that piece, we also saw some sign maintenance, and there's the routine sign maintenance, but I'm sure there's enough emergency sign repair that needs to be had.
In that video, Mike touched on our replacement program, but there's really kind of 2 types that we do. The first type is signs are constantly getting damaged. They're vandalized. Someone hits a post and knocks the sign down, or people shoot holes in them. There's a whole bunch of things. So we have a program where the guys are constantly responding and replacing the signs that have been damaged for that purpose. But in addition, like Mike mentioned, the signs simply become dead over time. And what we mean by that is they lose their reflectivity. So at nighttime, the sign doesn't shine back at you real well, and it's kind of a dark sign. You can't see it real well. So what we try to do is we have a program where we're replacing all the signs on a 10-year basis to make sure that they're nice and bright and in good shape. And we have an inventory of that. We can track which sign is where and how old it is, and we try to get them all replaced in a 10-year cycle.
Very good. About a minute to go, and I want to throw out the winter driving and preparations. I know 1 minute's probably not enough to cover it, but any words of advice for our motorists out there?
You know, Mike mentioned this earlier when we were talking about sanding, and I just reiterated. We're not perfect, but we try awful hard to be prepared and to be out there and to be putting sand in the correct places, to be plowing the roads when they get sand or snow on them, to be making the roads safe, but really it's a partnership. If we do our part and then the drivers drive too fast, they drive irresponsibly, they don't know their limitations, sometimes the best thing to do in the wintertime is simply don't go on your trip. If you look outside and you're not sure that you can handle that road and you can avoid the trip, don't go. Around here in Southern Oregon, the good news is most of the time if you just wait a few hours, it kind of thaws out and things get a lot better. And so the biggest thing I guess people need to do is be prepared. Know their limitations. Take chains if they're in an area where they don't have confidence and that might be too much snow. But just slow down, expect to take longer, and drive safely.
Yeah, very good. Good advice. All right. John Vial, Mike Boren from the Jackson County Roads Department, thanks very much for the time.
Thank you.
Thanks
All right.
for having us.
And thank you for joining us tonight on Jackson County Government Close-Up. For everyone here, our thanks to the student-run studios here at RVTV Studios on the campus of Southern Oregon University. Have yourself a good evening, and we'll talk to you down the road.